Hello, and thank you for having a listen to this week's episode of Secure Insights with NDK Cyber. Now, as many of you may know, NDK Cyber are first and foremost a cybersecurity recruitment company, recruiting globally, and particularly when you're hiring in maybe a niche skill set area where your location is proving a little bit tricky, or maybe you're scaling up rapidly. We've got you covered from your go-to-market hires to in-depth forensic hires to product development and everything in between, all under that cybersecurity umbrella. Now, we started this podcast and Secure Insights as a way to shine lights on important areas, to tackle hot subjects in the industry and give people a real platform to tell some pretty cool stories. So with that, this week I'm delighted to be joined by Jared Shepard. Jared is the CEO of Hypori, and Hypori are an organization that really look at a very niche area, but they have some pretty cool technology in the whole world of addressing this whole mobile device management, bring your own device piece, and we really get into that on this. We talk about Jared's journey, the problem that his organization fixes, kind of combining MDM versus security versus privacy for the user, and then we talk about costs and ease of use and everything else that goes into this world. Plus, Jared shares some pretty cool insights from his journey in building businesses and being that entrepreneur. So very excited to share this one. We're open to the feedback as always. Enjoy the listen. Right, we are live. Well, Jared, thank you for jumping on. I know you're a busy guy.
Oh, no worries, man. I appreciate you having me.
All good, all good. So, I would have done you an introduction there. It would have been very basic compared to the detail I'm sure you can bring to the table. But are you okay to just to give us an overview of kind of your background and where you've got to?
Yeah, sure. I'm Jared Shepard. I'm the CEO of Hypori. I'm in a lot of ways. I always joke. I say I'm the anti-CEO, but meaning by I'm not. I didn't come up in a typical form. I was a high school dropout homeless kid that ended up joining the army ultimately, and the army helped set me straight and give me a good foundation to build my life on. I served in the infantry originally, then became an IT guy. That opened the door for technology. I got out of the military, became a contractor, then ultimately started my first business almost 20 years ago. And then I spun Hypori out of it back in 2020 when I recognized that Hypori has this amazing opportunity to change the way all edge compute works. So here I am, here we are.
Nice, like it. Very succinct. You've naturally done that before quite a few times, I'm sure. So the anti CEO piece. What's that about? I mean, there's all sorts of
Well,
stories these
so
days.
like usually most CEOs come from a certain pedigree, right? They have certain education backgrounds. I mean, my highest education I still have to this day is a GED. So I've learned through so many other mechanisms, through mentorship, through experience, through opportunity, right? And so it's when you look for somebody who is the typical type of CEO to do the typical type of things, I'm not that guy. But if you want non-typical stuff and you want to do really cool things that most people don't think about, that's maybe I'm your guy for that.
Well, I guess maybe it brings a new angle of thought or approach to things that people aren't used to. Maybe that's what gets you the traction. Maybe it's really cool products, but I'm sure we'll get into that
It
in a minute.
happens a lot. People are like, "Well, hey, Jared, like, how did you do this? Like, whatever happened to be, how did you get to this without doing the following steps before you did it?" And I'm like, "Well, the one of the beauties of not having the formal education, and I'm not saying you shouldn't get a formal education. You absolutely should. I think there's great value in it, but I think part of a formal education is teaching you the glass ceilings that when you're a guy like me and you don't even know they exist, you just tend to stumble through them. So, I didn't know that there were limitations on doing certain things, and so I just did them. And afterwards, a lot of times people were like, "How did you pull that off?" I'm like, "I don't know. I didn't know any better."
But the military as well, right? That must have transferred a lot of lessons to the sort of the quote unquote corporate world pretty well.
Oh, 100%. The military was I mean, it was my saving grace in so many ways. It gave me the moral and the moral compass and the moral foundation in which I became a leader upon. Serving in the infantry, serving in combat arms. Where leadership is truly the only skill that the infantry has, right? Is because it's just people, and which means you have to lead people to accomplish the things that are necessary inside of the infantry. And so I think that in a lot of ways, the combat arms of the U.S. military and U.S. Army, which we just had our 250th anniversary, those established leadership traits in people that I think are just absolutely strong leadership traits that will serve those individuals well, regardless of what they use with them next.
Absolutely. I think it's through, I don't know about you, but especially in the last sort of 5 or 10 years, it seems like the industries are really waking up to that feeling of, oh, hang on, there's a ton of transferable skills here that maybe are being underutilized until recent. And
Yep,
it's
yep,
more and more.
absolutely. I mean, industry is interesting because the industry tends to try to escalate you from a technical skill standpoint. And then you kind of hit this peak, and then they say, "Oh, okay, well, now I need to teach this person how to be a leader of other technical skilled people," right? Whereas the military starts kind of the other way around, is from the very beginning. I need to teach you the basics, the fundamentals of leadership, right? Lead by example. You need to know the ethos that is a leader. So then that way, not only do you recognize it, but you become one, even at the lowest level of the military. And as you're working your way up, you can accomplish those types of tasks.
Mm. Yeah, I certainly think there's huge merit in that way of doing things. Just from my very sheltered view of how often do you see a very, very strong engineer, let's say, very good at engineering, principal status. Okay, cool. Now you're going to lead 6 people. Good luck. And then
Yeah,
you're sent on a management course for like 5 days, and then
it's hard.
it's
Well, and it's hard. It's hard for when you, especially I have technical guys that are just absolute gurus, and they tell me they're like, I'm doing what I like to do. I don't want to manage people. Like I don't want that drama. I'm doing what I love, which is I'm building things, or I'm writing code, or I'm doing and I think often in business and in industry we tend to promote people. In the military we joke about it. You promote people into the first layer of incompetence, right? So
okay.
they
Yeah.
keep doing well. You keep promoting them right up until they fail, and then you stop promoting them. But you put them in a place that they're failing, right? I mean, whereas you rather than encouraging them to succeed at what they're really good at.
It's a funny world. It's a funny world. But I mean, your approach is certainly working. Hyporia taking off and more traction all the time. I follow you guys on LinkedIn and my feed is full of your logo. I don't know
Uh,
whether the algorithms got me or you're forever at
that's
events and
good
things.
marketing, man. I'll tell
Yeah,
my marketing folks. That's awesome.
bonus coming their way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a plug. They paid me $50 to say that, you know.
Okay, all
But
right. Hey, but I mean, they just earned it.
so the Hypori journey, we'll come on to like more around the specifics of what you guys do and where it fits in the market in a moment. But just briefly, yeah, I guess what does it do? And there must have been a period when you went, crikey, we've got something here.
So yeah, 100%. And actually, it happens again and again.
Okay.
So my first company I built doing IT services, but largely wartime focused IT services for the Department of Defense, helping do really hard technical things in some of the worst places in the world at the time, which was that was Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, interesting places like that, right? And um, we were asked to help solve a problem for denied space or contested space operations, but the idea was, how can people securely communicate when they're in a place that's anything but secure, right? So the idea of like going into a place and buying a phone off of a market when the phone is probably already compromised by a nation state actor, and the network is probably already compromised by a nation state actor, how can you still securely command and control? And so it was a very small niche problem that we had to try to build to, and the genesis that became the genesis of what is Hypori, right? And because what we did is we broke it down and solved into a couple of major technical challenges. One of which was the number one way in which data gets compromised on the edge, or the users get compromised, is data in transit, data at rest, and so thus that kind of became the core of what Hypori is. Hypori does not transmit data to the edge device. It does not store data on the edge device. That means even if the edge device is compromised, you can't lose data. The enterprise doesn't lose data. And I say this all the time. We protect it as if we invented it this way on purpose. But to be honest, it was kind of a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was just an accident.
Yeah.
Which is when we assume that your phone is already compromised, or when we assume that the edge device is already compromised. The advantage of that is I don't want to know what's on it. My platform doesn't want any visibility on what's on your device. And the reason for that is because visibility is, if you look at zero trust principles in cybersecurity, visibility is a form of trust, right? It means I believe what you're telling me. So I don't want to believe it. We don't want to know. So what's on your device is your business and not the enterprise's. And it will never allow the stuff that's on your device to interact with the enterprise's data. So that way, that's how we protect the enterprise. And to your point, when we figured this out, and I figured out, man, we solved this really hard problem for this really small segment, in the Department of Defense. But I was like, this is such a bigger problem, right? This is everybody's problem. Privacy and security on the edge is everybody's problem. I'm like, we just solved both privacy and enterprise protection in one foul swoop. And then what we didn't know and found out later is there's also regulatory compliance that we solve, like data sovereignty. Think GDPR in Europe. Think, like the whole idea of where data resides and how data resides and how you have to protect data, in transit and on the edge device. And what about overreach into a person's privacy and all that? We make all that go away because we don't transmit data to the edge device. We allow you to interact. So Hypori is, in the most layman of terms, essentially a virtual cell phone. And we allow you to interact with that phone. So think how you interact with your phone today, touch, type, and swipe. We allow you to interact with that virtual phone as if it's right there on your device. But the data of that virtual phone isn't. It's actually just pixels. So, in real time, 30 times or so a second, our platform is looking for any missing pixel or any pixel that changes. And then as those pixels change, it streams the new pixel and it writes over the old pixel. And those are all encrypted and it's all happening in real time. And what we found is pixels are wicked hard to hack because they don't possess any data. They just simply possess a color combination, right? So what do you get out of that if you stole them all? Blobs. So you didn't get any data. So nothing is unhackable, right? If a nation state or an individual is willing to put enough resources against something, nothing is unhackable. But boy, our platform makes it really difficult.
It's fascinating. I didn't know the sort of the niche problems that were solved first of all, and then sort of stumbled into this. Oh, hang on, there's this whole other world out here that we could.
It gets even bigger. Like at first we started out as like BYOD in the federal government because it's really heavily regulated, right? And that makes sense. Okay, let's do BYOD in the federal government. Well, all right, who else cares about their data? Well, industry, right? Especially highly regulated industry. So think banking, think healthcare. Those industries have absolutely started to move into us very quickly like that. And then the epiphany, I give my wife credit for this because hopefully I get points one of these days when she sees one of these videos. She came to me one day and she was like, well, when can I have Hypori? And I was like, why would you want Hypori?
Yeah.
I'm like, we're this clunky DoD defense platform, et cetera. And she goes, no. Like if I have Hypori, I don't have to worry about losing this thing anymore. Right. Like if I lose my phone, I didn't lose anything, right? I don't lose the pictures of the kids. I don't lose anything else like that. And I'm like, yeah. And she says, well, and why can't I bring the big one with all the cameras to the kids' events? And then why can't I bring a little flippy one when I go out with my girlfriends to dinner? She's like, why can't I change this the way I changed my purses? And I was like,
yeah.
Oh, crap. This is way bigger. Way bigger. And then...
Go on, sorry.
Oh, there's more.
Sorry. So I'm jumping the gun here. Yeah.
Now you think about, okay, so all this stuff, right? All these things that'll make your mind blow up, right? And then you think about, okay, but wait a second. What about performance, right? Well, my virtual phone doesn't live here. It lives in the cloud. Why is that cool? Well, a cloud is a data center. And so it runs at data center speeds, which means I'm not using a mobile processor. I'm using a data center's processor. I'm not using mobile bandwidth. I'm using a data center's bandwidth. So the only thing coming here is pixels. The operating system is running in a data center. So now all of a sudden I can dynamically throw however many cores I want, 32 cores of processor and 64 gigs of RAM against a virtual phone and give you a better performing phone than you could buy anywhere. And you could just stream it to any device you're using.
I don't know which question to ask first. Okay, right. Let's. This has turned into this monster. Okay, cool, and a good monster.
Yeah.
So is this all available now? Then this Hypori for sort of you and I to go and purchase.
Yeah. Well, not for consumer. We're not there yet.
Okay.
Going to consumer comes. There's all kinds of problems like how do you sell at the individual level? How do you bill individually? How do you rate monitor? Like if I have one user who's just banging the heck out of Netflix, right? They're just streaming Netflix nonstop. Well, they're going to use a ton of processor time doing that versus user B who's like, yeah, I check my work phone 3 times a day, 4 times a day, right? My virtual work phone. So I don't have to carry a second phone. I carry my personal phone, but then I check my work phone 3-4 times a day. Those two different user profiles are completely different. We still have to figure out how we create that kind of performance environment. Like, is there like a low, medium, high performance environment, for different rates, et cetera? We still got to figure through that. But from a BYOD standpoint for corporate enterprise, the solution is here now.
That's awesome. And I was sort of researching prior to the call and the lead up, and there doesn't seem to be sort of jumping out as a lead competitor against exactly what you do. I saw a bunch of stuff around sort of just get MDM, but MDM doesn't, it's not the same,
Yeah.
right? And forgive me if I'm
So,
wrong.
so it was funny. Gartner a couple of years ago told me, and they were like, "Hey, Jared, congratulations, we've looked at this, and you actually are your own product category. And by the
That's
way,
pretty cool.
we're really sorry to tell you, you actually are your own product category." And I didn't get the sense of humor of that at the time, but what it means is, hey, it's cool. We don't really have any direct competitors, but that's also problematic, right? So when you're looking at a truck and you're comparing Chevy to Ford, right? It's just a feature battle. It's what preference do you like better? Okay, they're all
I
trucks. They all
see.
behave trucks, right? But fundamentally, we're not Chevy selling against Ford. We're Tesla selling against Ford. And yeah, we have four wheels and four doors, but that's about where the similarities end. And the user has to take the emotional leap with you to try something different, right? And so that's like, yeah, you're right. MDM is probably our number one competitor out there right now, and I could tell you a million reasons why we are way better than MDM, and you shouldn't be using MDM to do what we do. And then I can also tell you a million reasons why in your enterprise, if MDM makes sense to you, you should keep using it, but just use it inside of Hypori.
Understood. So where would the sort of I guess then, like you say, it's a mindset shift coming from
Yes.
MDM to what is Hypori? It's new. It's, I don't know.
Yeah.
You must get that sort of like, I don't know, new, don't know, leave it alone. We've got
What do you
MDM.
mean? What do you mean it's a virtual phone? It's a
Yeah.
virtual phone, and it resides in a secure enterprise. So that means the cybersecurity boundary, the boundary in which you have to defend, now doesn't go to the edge device. This no longer represents a security problem for your enterprise, right? So that's amazing. Now, if you want to use MDM to manage my virtual device because you love, say Microsoft Intune, and you do that because you have all of the operational picture, you can manage all your software deployments and everything else like that. Cool, you're welcome to. You can do that. Or you can use it. We also have that features built into Hypori itself, right? But we work perfectly fine with MAM or with MDM. Now, but inversely, MDM is mobile device management. It is not a virtual mobile device. It in itself is not a mobile device. And the only way that you can get to the M, which is management, whether you're doing mobile application management or mobile device management, is through control. It must have control of the edge device, either complete control or partial control of containers or the edge device, right? And then it also must defend those controlled containers, right? And to do so, that means it has to have something like, say, Defender, Microsoft Defender, to make sure that there aren't malicious things happening on that phone that are going after the places that are protecting it. The problem is all those possessions and controls, by the way, that's anything but zero trust, by the way. All those possessions and controls on that edge device require visibility. So now you start having privacy problems. Now you start having data sovereignty problems. Like, what if you weren't supposed to move my data from point A to point B, right? Or what about a spillage? What happens if, like in the government, if there was a classified information spillage? Well, you just turned my entire device classified against my will. And now you have to take my device and destroy it. I didn't sign up for that. Well, technically you did when you put MDM on your phone. We solve for all the problems.
So I guess you're still like, it's protecting on both sides of the fence. You're protecting
Yeah,
users'
yeah, yeah, yeah.
privacy versus
We
corporate.
actually, one of our taglines that we use is we protect everything that's important, the enterprise and your privacy.
It's a win-win. I like
Yeah.
it. And I guess 2020, your tenure as CEO started there. A hell of a lot of time changing in the world. COVID, the whole remote thing going mad. What was that time like for Hypori? I mean,
uh,
pretty wild, I
uh,
would assume.
yeah. Sucking from a fire hose for a million reasons, right? And uh, it's you understand. I spun Hypori out of my other business. So my other business, at the time, I think $100 million, 350 people, something like that. But the what we see in Hypori is so much more than what that services company will ever be. I decided to hire a CEO to run that company, and I was going to spin out Hypori and build it into what I envisioned, kind of the vision I shared with you, right? And we did it at the hardest possible time, right? COVID became this real thing. Everybody started the remote work, and we're like, wait a second, remote work, we're perfect for that. Well, except for I couldn't get in front of a customer to tell them that,
Oh, of course, yeah.
right? And so but at the same time, like I tell people like, well, why? I actually bought the IP that is Hypori out of a small startup called Hypori. Then and I recognized it, built it out of my company, Intelligent Waves, and spun it out into its own freestanding company. And people go, well, why didn't it succeed the first time? Well, I there's a couple of reasons for that, and one of those, ironically, is COVID. And if I would have gone to the federal government or to a massive enterprise, name the company, whatever it happens to be, and say, hey, how are you going to allow 80% of your workforce to work remotely? They would have laughed me out of the room. COVID changed that, right? The other two things that had to change from when the idea was originally incepted and then to where it is today is the backbone had to change, right? So now when we have 5G environments, low latency, high speed network connectivity, et cetera, like now all of a sudden the idea of virtualization on the edge makes sense. And the other thing that had to change, and we had to lift the whole product out of this monolithic server based design, was we had to move it into cloud, right? And the reason why, well, why cloud? Well, think about it. How often do you use your phone? You're not using it like a PC. You don't sit on it for 8 hours a day. You use it for, a while, 5, 10, maybe if you're an addict, you're on it for an hour and then you get off and then you're back on it for another hour, right? Where you're doom scrolling through Instagram. But
Been there, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've done it too. But the idea of a mobile phone usage is incremental. So it's elastic. And if you think about where the application of resources in an elastic fashion is the best, it is cloud. I can spin up resources, give you processing core, give you RAM, give you storage, let you use it. And then when you're done and you disconnect, I can turn it all back off again. I can give it to somebody else. Right. And so when you start talking about the efficiency of that over time, I'll beat this thing out every day.
What about cost as well? Does that kind of tie into this, as it's not a low cost that makes it seem a bit budget, and that's not what we're trying to do here
Cost
at all.
efficiency. Cost efficiency.
Cost efficiency. Yes, thank you. See, lessons, learning.
Yeah, yes. I mean, think about it. Like, so if I can manage cost by sharing resources, right, giving you dedicated resources when you're using them, but then when you're not, I can use them for somebody else, right? When talking about processing cores, RAM, storage, bandwidth, all that other stuff, it becomes more cost efficient, right? I don't have to print new circuit boards. I don't have to buy new screens. I don't have to replace this device every time my dog chews on it, or I drop it, or whatever, or I leave it at a bar, or whatever else it happens to be, right? There is no replacement cost. There is no initial cost. There's no manufacturing cost. So that begins to drive from an efficiency standpoint. It makes more and more sense. Like, why would you want to carry 2 phones or 3 phones? Like, you wouldn't. And this is an environment in which, like, on my virtual environment, my virtual Hypori environment, I have 4 other phones on this device. I have a Department of Defense phone, an authorized Department of Defense phone on my device. I have a CMMC compliance. So if you think government CMMC compliance, I have a CMMC compliant phone on this device. I have an R&D environment where I can actually play and test and do cool research and development stuff on this device. And then I have a dedicated SMS and text environment where I can just send text messages, enhanced text messages, all on this device. And none of it actually is here. It's just, it can all be used from here or from my iPad or from, whatever I want to use.
And so is it just you get logins and then it's all on there as.
So it depends. Each environment's a little different. So because each environment is literally an entirely different security enclave, a different security environment, it depends. And I don't say that to be, glib, but it's like one environment, biometrics, hardened MFA. Another environment, they use our integrated MFA. Another environment, you could use, MFA, provider C or D or whatever you want to use. Or, if you really just don't care about security, a PIN or username and password, right?
Sure.
But hopefully not. That's we're definitely started as a security focused product. So
Yeah, I was just thinking of obviously there's a huge security angle to this, but not just work efficiency. I think people who work in like you say, like lab environments or things that
Yeah.
aren't at a desk, and if they're on a quarry or in labs, in wherever it might be,
Well, think
the
about if you think about the advantage of BYOD or the advantage of mobility working, right? All right, your average employee, say you get them to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. But what if the 35 minutes they're on the train on the way into work in the morning, they could actually open up their phone and start checking emails? What if the 15 minutes, 20 minutes after they get off of work, they could jump back on a Teams call and finish a Teams call up on the way back? You just increase their efficiency significantly, right? And one of my biggest visions on this was being me, having been a former Army knuckle dragger, right, and a non-commissioned officer in the Army. The idea was like, the Army's famous for doing what we call formations before formations before formations, right? Like if the boss says, hey, we're gonna do this at 10 o'clock, then the next level boss says, hey, everybody be here at 9, and the next level boss says, hey, everybody be here at 6. Like, we're
okay.
gonna check to make sure everything's ready before the meeting, before the meeting, before the meeting, right? And that's burdensome, right? It's understandable, but it's burdensome. What if instead, like when the boss calls you on Saturday and it's like, hey, it's an emergency. I need you to sign this document and review and sign this document, and it has to be done before Monday morning at 6 a.m. Rather than you having to get up and go drive into the office to go knock this out, you pull out your phone while your kids are on the floor, while you're watching football, and you knock the task out, and then you put your phone back down and you go back to your family, right? So that convenience, that latitude where, yes, businesses are more efficient, but so are you. Like, all of a sudden, your life becomes more efficient too. That's the idea of a real BYOD program.
This is awesome. And I guess you touched on it earlier, but it kind of ties into the regulations that are ever increasing. GDPR, obviously. I want to say 2016 that landed with us. What a time
Yeah,
that was.
yeah.
But yeah, and since then a raft of others. But this is all compliant with those programs, right?
Beautiful, right? So like in the U.S. government and the Department of Defense, they have a ton of rules around what's called CUI, or critical unclassified information. Then you have in banking, you have like SEC controlled information, so Security Exchange Commission information. So every transaction, every trade, anytime somebody talks to you about moving money somewhere, that has to be logged and captured and protected, right? Healthcare, you have HIPAA, you have healthcare personal identifying information, you have PII, personal identifying information. Uh, in GDPR, to that point, GDPR data sovereignty, like you can't move my data from one location to another country without my written permission, right? Well, the beauty is we don't allow data to be exposed to compromise on the edge device. B, we can log and capture everything that happens inside of our secure environment. And C, I don't move anything anywhere. So we don't have to worry about that being captured, intercepted, lost, etc. So yeah, we solve for a lot of those problems.
Like you say, it's just a pixel. It's a display. It's nothing else.
Yep.
It's pretty wild. Does this kind of, and just for reference here, we're recording this, where are we now? June 16th. So there's a few things going on in the world at the moment geopolitically that are maybe unsavory in some categories. I'm assuming this would help in those situations as well, in
Sure. I
territories
mean,
which are
yeah,
uh,
we're in use across different defense activities. For the obvious reasons that we've already talked about, right? From a security standpoint and ease of access on edge devices, it has huge application across defense activities. People who are concerned about information getting out, people who are concerned about information being intercepted. Like, look, they're quiet in this, but they're not, because we know that they're pulling strings behind every curtain. The Chinese are at play. They are trying to accomplish their national objectives, and their national objectives largely have to do with China winning everything and not anybody else, right? And if we ever think that that's not true, then we're not paying attention, right? And it's really easy way to talk about. It's like one of the things that we talk about, we protect against, is the activities that Joe the user, because Joe the user is always your biggest threat to an enterprise, right? Joe the user is always the biggest threat. So how do we protect against Joe the user? Well, Joe the user loves technology. So Joe the user is on TikTok and streaming TikTok streams. Well, okay, where is all that data going to, and what's influencing the input and output of that data? China. Okay. Joe, the user, loves AI and embraces this idea of AI, and he's trying every new AI client out there. And man, what's the best free AI client out there right now? DeepSeek. Where's that data going? Right? What is that data being used for? And so, like, do you really want your enterprise's data existing on Joe the user's phone? Probably not, right? And for all those reasons, right? But then also, I don't want to tell Joe the user that he can't do whatever he wants to do if Joe the user wants to be dumb, right? And if he wants to go do things that are going to expose his personal information, sure, that's his decision. But he can't make that decision for the enterprise, and the enterprise shouldn't be able to make that decision for him either.
So it covers both again. Yeah, this is really cool. Jerry, we've jumped around a lot here, and largely due to my erratic questioning. So thank you for putting up with that. But
Too
just to,
easy.
to just to close out on this, I guess your advice for people sort of growing a product in the cybersecurity space, is it as it is at the moment? You've gone through the bringing this to the market. You've gone rounds of funding, growing out companies. Really broad question, but I guess is there anything you would share as like a you won't be able to do it without this?
Yeah, I would say if you're starting your own, go read Founder versus Investor.
That's interesting.
It's a great book, and it I wish I had read it before I started. Right, understand that like some of the golden rules that they say that are out there, they're golden for a reason. If something looks too good to be true, it is. Like if something makes you feel uncomfortable because it's something just doesn't feel right, it's probably not. Uh, More often than not, I would tell you, like, in fact, I can't even come up with a single example where my gut said don't do something and I did it anyways, that I was glad I did it. Right. I can give you a diatribe of lists where my gut said, oh God, don't do this. And I did it anyways and I regretted it. Right. So, like, go with your instincts. I say for entrepreneurs all the time, understand what it means to start your own business. It's when you're gonna take that plunge. People always ask me, well, how much does it cost? What does it cost for me to start my own business? That kind of thing, right? And that's not the right answer, not the right question. To be honest, if your product is good, you'll find money. There's money out there, right? There's money looking for you all the time. The real question is, are you willing to take risk? And when I say risk, I mean everything and time. You're willing to commit all of your time. And for a guy like me, who's now a father of 3 kids, like if I had to start this over again from the beginning and be a father of 3 young kids, I don't think I could have done it. It's hard. And so, you have to manage those things. And me being, a founder and owner of a professional services company, a founder and owner of a software company, a founder and director of a nonprofit that helps veterans in transition, and I have 3 kids at home. People always go, like, how do you do that? How do you have 2 businesses, a nonprofit, and kids? And the advice I give to you, if you're watching this, is start in the opposite order. You start with your focus on your children. And so, like, there is that I protect viciously time with my kids and my family. And then with the time that I have left, that's the time that I can apply to the other things that I do. And if you find that that's not enough, then don't do it. And I know that that's very anti-entrepreneurship, but what I've learned having done this now for 20 plus years is there's somebody sent me a meme once and it hit really hard. The meme says, do you know who's going to remember how hard you worked? It's not your employees. It's not your investors. It's not the people who made money off of you or the people that you fired. It'll just be your children. So, you know, focus on what's right. You can do amazing disruptive things. You can build amazing disruptive businesses. We can change the world. We as entrepreneurs can absolutely change the way people look at the problem, right? And that's what we have to do. We have to be able to do that. But be a good dad, be a good mom. Make sure that you do the right thing
Wow.
first.
I've got to admit, I wasn't expecting that, but it's a formula that's clearly working and continues to do so. So thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Well, Jared, we're at time here, so I'll wrap this up, but we'll chuck a bunch of social links and everything else in the description below for everyone to take a look at if needed. And thank you again for your time. It's been great.
It's awesome, man. I really appreciate your time. I was glad we got a chance to share a little bit.
Absolutely, man. Take it easy.
Talk to you later.